like you just mentioned, there are all kinds of accidents taking different kind of forms, and it's better that we prepare ahead. So thank you for the workshop. I think it's going to be useful for everyone. And now I'm going to give a short introduction about Gene. He joined ISI as a volunteer in 2011. And since then, he's been helping Stevens Institute of Technology campus, international students there. And he himself founded Genesis Research, a consulting firm that's focused on market intelligence of the US mutual fund industry. And their clients has been covering 80% of the market share of the total US mutual fund assets. So this is quite impressive. And if any students are interested in financial advices, I think Gene will also be an expert to go to. So now I'll hand over to Gene, and for any questions during the presentation, I kindly ask you to send that in the chat box, and then we will discuss about these questions after the presentation. Okay, I'll hand it to you, Gene.
All right, thank you, May. Those are really kind words, much kinder than what my wife usually says to me. And I can say that because she's not within 10 feet of myself. So anyway, all joking aside, she's great. So I've been fortunate to, as May mentioned, I've been fortunate to be part of a consulting firm that I started in 2002. And I recently became a grandpa. And so, I don't know if Doris knew she was inviting an expert on accidents when she asked me to give a seminar on accidents. But to give you a little bit of a background about myself, why I'm an expert in accidents. I've been involved with multiple auto accidents. Last year, I fell from my motorcycle, broke my collarbone. Last April, I was involved in a simple procedure that was supposed to be, essentially, it's a same-day surgery that resulted in a 14-day stay in the hospital. So, that was definitely medical malpractice. So, I'm going to be speaking mostly from personal experience tonight about all kinds of accidents. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I did prepare some PowerPoints, and let's do this. All right, so what do you typically associate with the word accident, right? So you wouldn't think of a bad haircut as an accident, right? So this looks like, maybe it was intentional, maybe it wasn't, but, to me, accidents, take shape in all kinds of situations. And here's another potential example of accident. So, this looks like clearly it was some kind of accident. So, I don't know how many times people actually run into tanks, but, certainly, getting into accidents with automobiles, that's very common. And as I was preparing the PowerPoint slides this week, this has happened today. My daughter was walking my dog in the neighborhood, and there's a new family that just moved in from Staten Island, and they have a huge dog. She looked like she was probably at least 70 pounds or so, and just decided to charge out the house, and basically took a big chunk out of my dog. So accidents can happen in all kinds of situations. Essentially, anything that you're not expected. Fortunately for Rocky, he's okay now. We took him to a vet, and my daughter's going to bring him home pretty shortly. So these are the accidents that we're actually going to be talking about tonight. Automobile accidents, falls in a public place, and medical accidents. So let's jump right into auto accidents. So, what comes to your mind when you are involved in an auto accident? You know, what's the first? You know, obviously there's a lot of things going on. It might be a multiple multiple car pileup. There might be, you know, injuries to other cars, you know, within your own car. So there's all kinds of things going on. You know, what I know everybody's muted, so you know. So I remember my first accident. I was so fragile, I didn't know what to do. Right, I just stood there, and you know, and I was involved with a person that didn't quite speak English that well either. So I think the two of us just hung out there, you know, waiting for the police to show up. So I made a list of, you know, essentially sequentially what you should do if an auto accident happens. So the most important thing is get out of harm's way. That's absolutely rule number one. So, you know, to give you an example, the last time my daughter got into a car accident, it was because some guy ran out of gas in the middle of the highway, and he tried to pull off to the median in the middle between the two directions of traffic. He didn't quite completely pull the car off into the median. So what happened was and the problem was, you know, he was coming off a bend. So by the time my daughter saw him, she had no place to go but to rear end him. And you know, luckily for my daughter, she basically did 3 donuts on the highway, and she wound up completely off the highway in the median, kind of what the guy should have been. So luckily for my daughter, she was okay. So, and once you get out, you know, once you get into a car accident, the number one rule is to get out of harm's way. Then, you know, there are other things to do, like taking videos, pictures of the incident. You have to phone the police, but before you phone the police, you have to figure out where you are. It's always a good idea to notify your family and friends, especially if they're nearby. There are all kinds of reasons to do that. And obviously, you need to fill out a police report and exchange driver's license and its insurance information. And lastly, you know, obviously, if the damage to the car is sufficient enough, you actually need to call a towing company. So let's talk about the first thing to do. So if an accident took place in a road like this, right, obviously there's not much visibility, and by the time the car sees you, you know, he might be out of room to maneuver. So if you are in a car accident, a safe place. So that means, you know, pull your car over to the shoulder if it's possible, you know, out of the traffic. If your car is behind a bend like the previous picture, be extra careful. So getting back to that example of my daughter, so after my daughter rear-ended this guy who could not pull the car into the median, as soon as the state trooper was pulled over, he himself was almost run over by a car that was behind him, simply because it was coming around a bend. Again, you know, so, you know, by the time you see that state trooper, you know, you're maybe a split second away. And, you know, number 3, if your car is run out of gas, you got to either pull up to the shoulder or into the median strip. There's no other way around it. So, you know, if it makes sense, you actually want to, you know, protect yourself with a car that's pulled over. So meaning, you know, put yourself between the traffic and your car. So, you know, your car, if somebody's coming around the bend and, you know, maybe they'll just hit your car, they won't get into hit you personally. The other thing is, you know, I've seen this, you know, you get into a car accident and the person or persons from the other car that get out, they're all angry. They're so mad. You know, they want to, you know, they want to show you some business, right? You know, just avoid all kinds of confrontation. You know, the cops on the way, help is on the way, your family and friends are on the way. So avoid any kinds of confrontation with you know, with these angry drivers. So that's the first thing, to get out the harm's way. Secondly, take videos, pictures. You know, we're a generation of selfies, Instagram, Snapchat, WeChat, Facebook, Twitter, you name it, right? So there are instances where, if it's safe, right? Try to take some 360 videos or pictures, especially someone's running a red light and, they run into you. It is possible that you can take a video before the light changes, for example. So you also want to take crystal clear pictures of damages to your car and the other car. Again, try to protect yourself from, from stuff. So in this case, some videos with some pictures might avoid, the other party filing phony claims of physical injuries. So when my daughter got into a car accident, later the other party claimed that, they were physically injured or whatever, which turned out to be false. So, as much as possible, you want to gather evidence. So evidence in this case would be pictures or videos. Okay, get location, right? So if you're in local traffic, it's pretty simple, right? Go to the nearest intersection. You can take a picture of the street signs, right? So coming from Hoboken, right? So it's either Washington Street or whatever street. So take a picture of the street signs. But if you're on highway in the U.S., all the highways are really well marked by the mile markers. So most of the time, you are within pretty short walking distance of a mile marker. And as you can see, I've included a couple of mile markers on the bottom of this slide here. For the most part, the mile marker actually have decimal points. So the thing to note is what highway you're on, and secondly, which direction you're going. So the highways in the U.S. are either northbound or southbound, eastbound or westbound. So in this case, this person is traveling southbound on I-35. I apologize, and the mile marker is 103.5. So when this person calls the police, they will state exactly that I'm traveling southbound on I-35. The mile marker is 103.5, and the police knows exactly where you are. So this is really important to note the location where you are. So once you get on the phone with the police, I'm going to say call 911, because when I was traveling in China, I found out they don't use 911, they actually use 119, right? Is that correct, Doris? Just nod your head if it's correct. So different countries have different digits that you dial. So just a reminder that in the U.S. it's 911. First thing to do is you want to report location. We just went over that. You also want to request an ambulance if it's necessary. So obviously, when I broke my collarbone in a motorcycle accident, I was just stretched out on the pavement. I couldn't move really because I couldn't breathe. Obviously, an ambulance was necessary to get me, to get me to places where they can actually fix me. And if also know the time of call, but given that we all have cell phone now, so all the calls have now timestamps. So but nonetheless, try to kind of remember what time of the day it was. This is very important. Notify your friends and family, because I'm going to go back to my daughter as an example. The other driver was actually pretty hostile. And so when my daughter called me, she was just crying and crying and crying, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong, but I was really nervous. And so I knew something pretty bad happened. Ideally, this is how the conversation should have gone. Dad, I'm okay, but I got into a car accident. So, that's the first thing you say. I'm okay, if there's no injury. So you want to first specify your state, right? So you're okay, I'm okay, but I got into a car accident, right? But if you're not okay, let's say it's not that bad. Say, hey, I have some minor injuries, but I'm okay. and I just got into a car accident. So that's the first thing to say. And your family and friends on site can help a lot, right? So as soon as I arrived on site to where my daughter was with a car accident, the other driver backed off, right? He was like a big, tough guy, you know, ready to rearrange my daughter's face. But, you know, when I showed up, you know, then that kind of settled some tension. And, you know, I reminded him that nobody was hurt and it was actually his fault, right? So then he calmed down. So the other thing about family and friends is, you know, they can help gather your belongings and, you know, other type of emotional support on site. So when I got into a motorcycle accident, my buddy came and helped. He, you know, he arranged a tow for my motorcycle. He picked up my belongings and, you know, he followed me into the hospital. So if it's possible, if there are friends and family nearby, it's very helpful to, you know, to get them on site. So, you know, filling out the police report is always a good thing. You know, regardless of whether you want to file a claim to an insurance company or not, because in the U.S., it's so easy to get sued for anything. So you always want to have a police report as a backup. And, you know, you don't have to file a insurance claim, even though you filed a police report, but it gives you the backup, right? So later, if you decide that you want to go through the insurance company to, you know, to get some payments for either medical bills or, you know, automobile repair bills, you would have the option. So of course, exchange insurance cards and registration information. Take a picture of the other guy's driver's license and make sure it's the person. It's pretty important, actually. It's a small detail, right? You wouldn't believe like how many people are driving without a real driver's license when expired driver's license. So this is actually a key piece of detail that you have to jot down. So fill out the police report. Always have that in your back pocket. And finally, call the towing company. So we're getting to the part where all this stuff is settled. So usually the police would actually help. Sometimes will help you call the towing companies too, because especially in places like New Jersey, you know, only certain towing companies are actually allowed on certain highways. So I was involved in an accident on Garden State Parkway, but you know, I couldn't just call anybody. You know, it has to be a you know, New Jersey State Police approved towing company. So I would recommend get AAA membership, $50 a year. That's $50 you ever spend in your life. Better than, you know, 10 cups of Starbucks. Awesome $50 to spend. And you know, my daughter was driving a Subaru, and believe it or not, Subaru actually has roadside assistance if you buy the car through the dealership. So we wound up using the Subaru roadside assistance. So they basically towed it to a Subaru center. So it's pretty easy. You know, there are certain things that are pretty easy in the U.S. So towing is one of the easiest things in the U.S. So fortunately, you know, this is one of those things that you don't really have to worry about in a automobile accident. All right, so let's talk about prevention, right? Prevention is actually the best thing to think about, you know, in terms of, you know, dealing with accidents, right? You know, accidents are unfortunate, and the reason why they're accidents is because you don't expect them and you don't plan for them. So, but there are ways to, you know, to help you prevent automobile accidents. So there's some situations like, you know, if you're driving eastbound in the morning or westbound in the afternoon, there's going to be sun glare. You know, be careful. Always have, you know, sunglasses, and you know, obviously bad weather. If you run out of gas, if there's potholes. So I made a list here of things that would help you out in terms of avoiding accidents in the future. The number one rule is don't text and drive. You know, I have to come clean. I've rear-ended a truck when I was in a rental car. So I was on a business trip and it was raining. So I was running late to the meeting. So I was texting the person I was supposed to meet with saying, hey, I'm stuck in the traffic in the rain, I might be 5 minutes late. And so I was texting the guy, the truck, the 18-wheeler before me, all of a sudden just stopped, right? Because, again, there's traffic. And I just, boom, slammed into his back. He didn't even notice because it's an 18-wheeler. I was hoping my accident, my damages weren't that bad because, I didn't run into him that badly, maybe 10 or 15 miles per hour. But because he was a truck, an 18-wheeler, so I started driving again. And the guy in the next lane started, broke down his window and started trying to get my attention. Hey, look, your bumper's hanging, hanging out, your front end is kind of like falling out of the car. So obviously, don't text and drive. That's rule number one. Don't drive under the influence. So influence could be anything, right? Too much alcohol, some kind of medicine, for medical reasons, or you're just in a bad mood. Your dog just got bit by another dog. You're in a bad mood. So try not to drive under influence. Don't drive while you're fatigued. So I recently became a grandfather. My grandson lives in Texas. So, because of the COVID season, we don't fly anymore. So when we want to see our grandson, we have to, we literally drive to Texas from New York. So, obviously it's very difficult to say, hey, I want to make some good time, but at the same time, I'm tired. If you're tired, just pull over, right? Don't run yellow lights. Obviously, don't run red lights. Yellow doesn't mean go faster. Yellow means slow down and prepare to stop, right? Yellow does not mean, speed it up. Believe it or not, rubbernecking actually causes a lot of accidents. So for international students, I'll explain what rubbernecking means. So rubberneck is make your neck like a rubber that stretches really long. So we see another accident on the road, you stretch your neck real tall, trying to see what's going on, with the accident. So that's called rubbernecking. Avoid driving in inclement weather. Inclement is a fancy word for bad. So don't drive in bad weather. Do not run off gas. I'm talking to you from experience. Running off gas can cause accidents. Maintain your car, obviously, brakes is the first thing that comes to mind, or fluids. You might be, most of the cars are pretty advanced now, but back in the day, you had to put in steering fluids, all kinds of fluids to make a car run properly. So maintain your car. Always have sunglasses in the car because it is absolutely critical that, if there's sun glare, there's some kind of protection against that. Beware of road hazards. So, the previous slide, we saw a pretty big pothole, right? The problem with potholes is, especially in the rain, you don't know the depth of that pothole. So a lot of times you drive over, boom, the entire front end collapses. Number one, it damages your car. Number two, you might change the direction of the car and throw you into oncoming traffic. I've seen accidents where people run into the oncoming traffic. It's not pretty. Always signal before you turn. So, everything here we talked about is pretty common sense. Reason why you want to signal before you turn is if you make yourself predictable to other drivers on the road, you're going to avoid a lot of trouble. So everything here is common sense, right? Avoid danger, make yourself predictable, and that's pretty much the bottom line. Okay, so that's the best thing about prevention. Prevention is the best cure for accidents. Now I want to talk about insurance a little bit. Given that everybody's on mute, I'll just keep going. Unless you have questions, you'll stop me. So there are different types of insurance in the U.S. Liability is the most basic minimum coverage that most states require. So what it means is that if you're at fault for damages to the other person, the insurance company will pay for it. Collision will cover your own car. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. The insurance company will repair your car. There's something called the PIP, right? Where I live is called Palisades Interstate Parkway, but in the insurance world, It stands for personal injury protection. So this is, pretty much regardless of who is at fault. So if you get into a car accident, you have the PIP coverage. Your insurance company will pick up your medical bills. There's insurance against uninsured or underinsured coverage. So what that means is, if you get hit by a driver who's uninsured, or they don't have enough coverage to cover your damages, you actually can buy coverage for that. And of course, there's comprehensive, which is, basically everything, which is liability, collision, whatever you can throw in there. So therefore, the word comprehensive includes collision, medical expenses, liability, and, pretty much everything that we mentioned here. Okay, so there's something called the no-fault states. So what it means is, so in New York and New Jersey, these are called no-fault states. And I have a little experience with this as well because, when I got into the motorcycle accident, it was I basically fell on my bike. I wasn't hit by another car. No one else was involved, right? So, also, as far as my daughter's most recent accident, so basically it doesn't matter whose fault it is in a car accident. Your insurance company has to pay for your damages. That's what no fault means. So if you go into a car accident, so you're completely at fault, or the other person is completely at fault. It doesn't really matter. The insurance company would just pick up the what are the payments, right? So of course it gets messy then, if the other guy is not insured, the other guy, woman, person is not insured. So there are two ways that you can get coverage for being hit by an uninsured driver. Number one is okay, so this also includes being hit by a car if you're a pedestrian, right? So as long as you have an auto insurance, so let's say you're walking on Washington Bridge and you get hit by a car on Washington Bridge. So for example, I own two cars, right? So I have auto policies for two cars. So if I'm hit by an automobile on Washington Bridge, I'm covered by my insurance company, especially in a no-fault state. And let's say let's roll back the clock. Let's go back time back into the past a little bit. Let's say I'm 22 years old and I'm still covered under my parents' insurance policy. If I'm hit by an automobile and I'm a pedestrian, I'm also covered. So as long as you're in coverage of some kind of auto insurance policy, you could be covered as a pedestrian being hit by a car. There's also a pretty cool program called NJPLIGA, and that's a mouthful. So it stands for New Jersey Property Liability Insurance Guarantee Fund. So they deal specifically with pedestrian cases, especially pedestrians hit by uninsured drivers. So that's pretty specific to New Jersey, obviously. So if there are students that you know of, or people and friends that you know of who were pedestrians hit by uninsured driver, you can look into the NJPLIGA fund. But like everything else in the U.S., there's there's probably a statute. I didn't look into what a statute is in terms of how long the statute is. So what a statute is a limitation of time, right? So certain things don't have statute, right? A first degree murder, for example, has no statute, right? But if somebody stole a watch from your home, you don't catch a thief in I think 7 years or whatever it is. Then if you catch him after 7 years, technically the statute has passed. So statute is a time window within which you can file a claim. So the PIP claims with the NJPLIGA, this is straight out their website, so you can take a look. So I'll read it for you. Pedestrians injured in an accident with a private passenger automobile with no other available coverage may be entitled to the benefits pursuant to the Unsatisfied Claim and Judgment Fund Law, NJSA 39-6-60. Notice of the claims must be given within 2 years of injury. So there you go. That's the statute, 2 years. A notice of intention to make a claim form can be downloaded from the forms library. So, so if you know of anyone who's a pedestrian in Jersey being hit by an automobile, there's actually a remedy for that. There's another type of claim, which is uninsured motorist. So again, individuals injured in a motor vehicle accident involving an uninsured vehicle may be entitled to UN benefits. If no other coverage is available, the UN claims process begins with the filing of a notice of intention to make a claim within 180 days. So that's a little shorter than 2 years, right, as required by NJSA 39-6-65. Those statutory requirements of the Unsatisfied Claim and Judgment Fund Law, NJSA 39-6-61, must also be satisfied. And NOI form can be downloaded from the forms library. So there are a couple of remedies in terms of pedestrians being hit by uninsured motorists in New Jersey. Okay, so let's talk about medical accidents. It may happen. I hope for all of you it would never ever happen, because it's not it's not a pleasant day to it's not a pleasant way to spend your day or the weekend. For me, I spent 2 weeks that way. So actually, I could not find so essentially I was involved in a very mundane I guess a very routine procedure, right, for men over 50. So I basically went in for a colonoscopy. Essentially, I came out with whoopsie. So essentially, I came out with a perforated colon, which is a big difference, right? So essentially what I had to do was cut my belly open about 12 inches long, took out my organs, washed all my organs, and then put them back. And they couldn't sew it back because the cut was so long and so deep. They basically just left it open for it to heal by itself. So by the time the cut healed, there's so much scar tissues that some of my intestines were actually attached to the belly. So it was pretty nasty, So I went in for a very, very routine procedure. I wound up in the hospital for 14 days. You would think that's a slam dunk, to find an attorney to represent me, in a malpractice suit, right? I still have not found an attorney who's willing to take my case, even though I think it's a slam dunk. The reason for that is most, malpractice attorneys don't interested in potential big settlement cases, right? So, the fact that I was, I was pretty healthy, I recovered right away, and I actually managed to get myself into a motorcycle accident five months later. They're like, you're not a good case for us. So, actually, essentially, I don't have a remedy, for that malpractice because no lawyer would take my case. And another reason for that is, most patients actually have to sign a waiver before a procedure or an operation. And there's some difficulty to prove the malpractice as well. So for that reason, it's pretty, unless something really bad happens to you, for the most part, it's actually pretty difficult to initiate a malpractice lawsuit. So I would suggest, do a lot of research on the doctors, be careful, ask a lot of questions. The irony for me is that I actually interviewed 5 doctors before I settled on this person, and he turned out to be, the one doctor that, that sent me to the hospital for 14 days. So some other things I'll talk about. So false in public places, right? Um, if if there's a case, you have to again file the claims right away. So again, there's a statute of limitation. So basically, you have to explain why the agency was negligent and how the negligence caused your injury. And then finally, you have to prove, your financial and other losses due to the injury. So these are, essentially the how you build your case. And I would say most public places are, well protected by, by the laws, unless it's really gross negligence, right? So for example, you're walking to the city hall, and each step of the city hall has like 2 inches of ice on it, right? Unless it's that kind of gross negligence. Usually it's pretty hard to sue the city or, most public places. But again, your only remedy in cases like false in public places is essentially just, seeking recovery of damages, to make you whole, either financially or other means. Again, you have to find a lawyer. Unfortunately, again, I'm not a legal attorney, I'm not a counsel, and I'm certainly not an expert in falling public places. But if it's really difficult to pursue a malpractice lawsuit, it's probably pretty difficult to pursue some kind of lawsuit, by falling in public places. You probably have a better shot, getting burned by a hot cup of coffee in a McDonald's and, suing the U.S. government for falling on one of the parks, or one of the steps. Okay, so this is my presentation tonight for for dealing with accidents. And, accidents will happen, right? So one of the expressions in the U.S. is, there are two things that are certain in life, right? Death and taxes, right? I would add a third, accidents, right? So I don't think anybody can go through their entire life without going through some form of accident. So then, so what the important thing is, how do you deal with accidents? How do you remedy, your damages or losses in an accident? So that's kind of what we focus on tonight, how to get you through these unforeseen, unfortunate circumstances. Okay, and I want to thank the Rutgers crew for inviting me tonight. I think I've used up my 35 minutes.
Well, thank you, Gene, for the presentation. I think we really covered a lot of different accidents and really in deep. So here I have few questions in the chat box for you. The first one from David Manon. In regards to rubbernecking, many drivers in New Jersey will do this if there is an accident on Parkway or Turnpike. Do you have any advice for avoiding an accident when other drivers are rubbernecking?
Yeah, so my answer is actually pretty simple. Again, most of these accidents can be avoided with a little bit of common sense and good behavior. So when I see an accident, I don't take my eyes off the road. I just drive actually extra carefully, knowing that people are going to be rubbernecking and they might even slam on the brakes to get a better picture. Even I've seen people taking pictures of accidents or even videos. So I would be extra cautious when I'm approaching accidents, just knowing that people are going to be rubbernecking. And it's kind of annoying because it slows down the traffic for me. I'm always hoping to, get to places faster, not slower.
Okay, another question is from Doris. She says, if I'm to call 911, how do I gather my words? Should I say, like, dear officer, I just had a what accident at what location? Could you please come down as soon as possible?
Yeah, so, it's kind of like calling your family and friends, right? We're writing a newspaper article, right? you want to put the most important information to the front, right? So 911, you know, dispatchers say, hey, you've reached 911. How can I help you, right? You say, I'm in a car accident, right? So that's the first thing to do, right? You want to convey, you know, why you're calling the 911. I'm in an accident, and here's my location, right? If you want, you could also say, but I'm okay, right? So the same thing, you know, the same information that you're going to convey to your family and friends, you have to convey to a police officer as well. And you know, hopefully you're not bad enough that you couldn't make the call yourself, but if you're good enough to make the call yourself, you know, I made accident, I'm okay, and here's my location. And you know, of course, if you need ambulance or if you need tow truck, police usually can arrange that for you as well. Doris, you don't have to say, could you please come down as soon as possible, but because it is their job to come down as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So you don't actually have to say that. But Doris is asking that because she's super polite. And she also used the word, please. Could you please come down? So, Doris, you're pretty awesome.
Doris just sent in the chat box, file claims when fall in public means to call insurance company right away?
No, so in this case, it's actually filing claims against the agency that owns the property usually. So this is a little different, you know. There are possible cases we can file a claim through your insurance company, you know, your auto insurance. So one of the examples is, you know, let's say you're on the parkway, you got hit by a car, right? So in those cases, you can file a claim with the, you know, with the auto insurance policy. But if you're in Central Park and you slip on the ice, you're basically filing a claim against New York City. And so this would need to be handled through a lawyer. And it would be pretty difficult. I'm guessing it'd be pretty difficult for anybody to take these kind of cases because these kind of lawyers, they don't make money unless there's a settlement. So, you know, for example, malpractice lawyers, they don't charge a dime until there's a settlement. So when there's a settlement, they'll take 1/3 of the settlement. But so they obviously they will only take settlement if they think it's a case where they can definitely win the case and the settlement's going to be pretty big. Most lawyers now charge about $600 to $700 per hour. So it has to be worth their time, right? I don't think any one of us tonight is making $600 an hour. Not yet for Doris. Well, not yet for me either. So for that reason, you know, I would imagine it's pretty difficult to sue the city. And plus, there are all kinds of laws that probably protect those properties.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Doris? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
I see Ethan is here. Do you have any questions for Jean, Ethan? Ethan is muted.
No.
Okay. If we don't have any more questions, then I think we can close the workshop. Thank you again, Jean, for preparing the presentation. I think with the recording, more students gonna see it. We can even play it with like the new coming international students in the winter. So it's really helpful. Thanks again.
All right, thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.
I had a great time with you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
We're
Thank you.
signing off.
Doris, before we go, I just want to check with you since we're recording this, right? If I hit stop recording, then where can I retrieve the recorded video? I don't want to lose the video after I close the meeting.
I think David can answer that question. I never did that.
Yeah, so they send an email to the host with a link to the recording when we're finished.
Okay. Okay. Cool. And we can edit the length. Okay.
Yes.
I
That's
can
perfect.
edit. Yeah, I
That's-
can edit.
Cool. Okay. I'll stop recording then.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank